Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. It is conference championship weekend. Very, very exciting. We got two matchups to break down. We've, of course, got the Seahawks and the Rams, in addition to the Broncos and the Patriots leading off on Sunday. But we have other things to discuss as well. The coaching carousel starting to sort itself out a little bit. A couple of hires officially trickling in over the course of this week. You know, Harbaugh finally agreeing with the Giants. We got Stefanski going to the Falcons. Jeff Hafley goes to the Dolphins, and Robert Saleh goes to the Titans. But rather than talk about those guys, we want to speculate a little bit more. But even further than that, we would like to talk first about a coordinator hire that could really change some things. So, Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, kind of realizing maybe his old pal Greg Roman wasn't going to be the guy to take the Chargers to the next level. So going with it with a bit of an off-the-wall hire, at least relative to what you'd expect from the Harbaugh coaching tree with the Chargers, bringing in one Mike McDaniel to run that offense. I thought that was a great hire. I felt he could have. There was like a couple of paths that McDaniel could have taken. I thought where either he takes another head coaching job right away, but maybe for a team that's a little bit less attractive, or just go somewhere that's promising like the Chargers, run the offense for a year, and then get a much more desirable job next year if he so chooses. And I think that this was the better move for his career, and it certainly makes the Chargers a lot more interesting coming into the 2026 season.
Yeah, normally you'd maybe have some concern about an incoming offensive coordinator, especially when there's such a contrast, in my opinion, between Greg Roman and Mike McDaniel. You maybe sometimes worry that there's a transition period, and if McDaniel's only sticking around for 1 year, maybe that 1 year won't be as good as everybody hoped. If there is such a transition where it takes 6 to 8 weeks or whatever before the Chargers really click as an offense. However, Mike McDaniel had immediate results when he got to Miami. There was no buffering. They just torched immediately out of the gate. Granted, there was an element of surprise at the time because nobody had run an NFL offense the way McDaniel did at that point, and defenses had no tape. That is an extreme illustration of how this can sometimes look. You remember the Wildcat offense of Tony Sperano, rest in peace, with the Dolphins, and sure. there was like 5 quarters where NFL defense were like, what the hell? How do we can't stop this stupid thing. And then you just need 2 weeks usually, or some amount of focus, and you can sort of just, oh wait, no, it all runs through here and here. And if we just do this and this, it's dead. And not that the McDaniel offense became dead in Miami, or at least not for any schematic reason, but he won't quite be able to just blindside the league with everything he's doing with the Chargers. However, the difference between Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa is so profound that I don't think McDaniel needs any element of surprise at this point. Like, he can almost he has enough surprise and enough deception in the play designs that when you combine like the kind of railgun throwing velocity that Justin Herbert can produce, this could be pretty nuts. I personally believe that, and call me a hater, I don't care, but what Josh Allen has done in Buffalo, I absolutely believe Justin Herbert could have done if he was just kind of called to do the same things and provided the same play structures, provided a same caliber offensive line of late, especially. But not to say McDaniel will run the way like Brian Dable originally built what we now know as just sort of the Josh Allen ongoing offense. But McDaniel, I absolutely think, will make Justin Herbert a 40 touchdown quarterback this year.
So where do you think that they can? I mean, obviously having 2 healthy offensive tackles is going to help, but as far right, I mean that's certainly what was kind of their undoing this season. But you look at the personnel that the Chargers have. Who do you think kind of gets elevated? I mean, I think that there is a case to be made here, like you were saying with Justin Herbert, and just projecting out X number of touchdowns, but. Is this good for Ladd McConkey kind of getting back after something of a down year in 2025? Does this unlock Quentin Johnston over the course of the full season? Do we see Trey Harris start to get a little bit more involved? Is Gadsden going to be the big kind of X factor in this passing game? Like, who do you think benefits the most currently on the roster from this hire?
I think all those guys definitely McKechnie and Gadsden benefit. It's possible that Gadsden could be the real jackpot there if the Chargers, if Jim Harbaugh approached Mike McDaniel and was like, can we do stuff with Gadsden that you were doing with Jonnu Smith 2 years ago? Like, if that was sort of their priority in the design, then Gadsden would just go completely insane. But if it's more like they're trying to build something new that doesn't necessarily look like the Dolphins offense and sort of are just allowing McDaniel to build something new with these very different, tools, resources that he has to work with relative to Miami, that wouldn't be shocking. And with McKechnie, to call it like a real boost in value, we'd I guess need him to push for fantasy wide receiver 1 category as opposed to fantasy wide receiver 2. And I don't think it'll make that huge of a difference. Like, as much as I'm a big Ladd McKechnie fan, it's not like I saw him as a true wide receiver 1. I just more so saw him as like a Emmanuel Sanders kind of player or something like that. And which to me is still very good and definitely a player to target in both real life and fantasy. But I don't think he's going to become Tyreek Hill, not Miami Tyreek Hill. So I think the look will be a little bit unique. It's not going to look quite like the Miami offense. It's more I also think Jim Harbaugh will collaborate with McDaniel. I think both of those guys can learn from and appreciate each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see sort of like a hybrid of the Mike McDaniel principles that were shown in Miami, the theories that he's carried all this time, and more just a jumboed version of it, kind of. Like, I don't expect that the Chargers are not going to become a 3-wide Mike Martz kind of offense all of a sudden. It's still going to be a lot of running. It's just, I think the tempo is going to be better. The explosiveness is going to be way better. And not to kind of cop out from the question you posed, John, but I actually think the biggest winner is Omarion Hampton.
There we go. And, obviously we saw, I'd say like most notably in 2023 with the Mostert and Achane rookie year. They had arguably the most devastating rushing attack in football that season.
McDaniel's a genius at the run game too. I mean, it's not just that it was very impressive how he somehow got big numbers, at least for a time, out of Tua Tagovailoa. But he's a total monster in the ground game too. I mean, Mike McDaniel is truly a lot like Kyle Shanahan in the sense that they are both kind of innovative points scoring offensive coordinator play callers, but they are both very run first about it. Like there is no ambiguity, and it's kind of funny in this era of all the EPA fetishization and the passing fetishization. We can sort of all observe, like, well, Shanahan's the best play caller, but we can't also observe that it is owed by some part to the fact that he does establish the ground game as a constant. And I think you're almost going to get like a Chip Kelly to Philadelphia kind of effect, something like that, where they're running more plays, they're running the plays better. Simple as that.
Yeah, so I think that this was a huge hire for the Chargers. I think that we can have a much rosier outlook for their offense from a fantasy perspective this coming season, pretty much across the board. Like you said, I'm glad that you mentioned the ground game there.
I checked Trey Harris in Dynasty too, and this upcoming season or whatever. Not to rule out Quentin Johnson from consideration, but Johnson's not good enough, and Trey Harris might not be good enough either. But we don't know for sure in Harris's case yet.
Right, and he started to come on like a little bit towards the end of the season. He
played
pretty
more,
much, yeah. So I mean, I was definitely big on Harris as a prospect. I don't hold it against him too much that there was a bit of a learning curve this year, given that offense, and then given also the offense that he was coming from at the college level. But he was pretty dominant each of his years, whether it was at Louisiana Tech or at Ole Miss. Let's move on over to Buffalo. Heads roll in Western New York after another early playoff exit for the Bills. They have tough game out in Denver, epic game, crazy game. I mean, one of the best games in the playoffs that we've seen recently. Bills end up on the losing end in overtime, and they just, I mean, I did feel like they kind of reached the critical mass where something had to happen, similar to Baltimore. Although, of course, in Baltimore's case, they had to, or they just straight up missed the postseason. But for Buffalo, it was kind of more of the same. And so Sean McDermott no longer the head coach there. Do you find that the Bills opening is the most appealing for prospective coaching candidates out there as a result of this?
Not really. I mean, tied with Baltimore and maybe something I'm forgetting. I don't know. It's a good place to be, but I think Brandon Beane, the GM, will eventually go down as a villain, maybe sometime pretty soon, a villain in the lore of Buffalo Bills history, because as much as I understand the critical mass sentiment, I certainly understand that the frustration was just so great that it felt like something had to change. But what needed to change was basically their luck. I mean, if for it to come down to that Brandon Cooks play, which I have no view on it, there are, in my opinion, some situations where it's just lines are too blurry. Things are not solid enough to rule, objectively in any particular way. That play is definitely one for me. If the NFL had called that a catch, then Sean McDermott does not get fired. And
Mm-hmm.
if it comes down to a fact like that, I think it's pretty patently unjustifiable, because unless they were going to fire him anyway, like, you're literally saying the ruling of those referees, a call from New York may as well have been a call that to Brandon Beane himself saying fire McDermott. That might as well have been what the call was actually. And that's absurd. You would never handle things on that basis normally. And yet, out of the emotionality, the impulsiveness of the situation, the political contentiousness of the situation, they acted that way. They acted as if it did make sense to fire McDermott on the basis of that Brandon Cooks play. And that's a bad process at the very least. I happen to think Brian Daboll's a good coach, and I happen to think Brian Daboll doesn't get nearly enough credit for building what we know of as the modern Buffalo Bills. However, I thought Joe Brady probably improved the Brian Daboll offense, if anything. I think it's possible that Brian Daboll is good and Joe Brady was clearly still better. And in any case, the Brady thing is the same calculus as the question on McDermott. It's like, if Brandon Cooks doesn't get called an interception on that play, Joe Brady is still the offensive coordinator of that team unless he's hired as a head coach somewhere else. So we're getting, I think, a pretty clear setback in the quality of the Bills roster, like the sort of solvency of their structure as a team, and the place that the bless you, the place that the how to say this, the place where the Bills sort of lost equity or whatever was all wagered to create a power void for Brandon Beane personally to capitalize on. So with the Bills lost, Brandon Beane gained in power in the organization. And that's, I know someone could dispute my reasoning there, but like, that's obviously not good for the team. If what they lose in McDermott and Brady was lost so that Beane could consolidate power, that clearly is just bad for the team, because they made the coaching worse. So the GM, who maybe is not good, who at the very least, in my opinion, has shown himself to be a backstabbing, conniving person, that seems to me like a bad trend for the Bills. And especially when they, I think, were on the correct path before. They were on the correct path this year. You just ran into one of the best defenses of the past 10 years, and too much of the game came down to a ref call. That happens to other great teams too. They don't blow up the team when it happens. They say like, we got to get a little stronger, come back next year so that we aren't so it doesn't come down to luck at all. That's basically the way the winning organization would look at it. And Brandon Beane, clearly, I call him a backstabber because he was clearly scheming against McDermott and Brady all this time. And we know that because Terry Pagula had a little filter problem when he was speaking to the media and blurted out that like, oh yeah, Brandon told, he didn't say Brandon told him, but figure it out. See if you can figure it out, who told Terry this line. Yeah, Brandon Beane didn't want Keon Coleman. Keon's a bad guy, and Joe and Sean McDermott, they wanted him the most. And it's like, Brandon Beane is a treacherous liar. Go look up. You can find Billy McKinney and some other people found some clips, actual clips of Brandon Beane speaking in front of television cameras with lights, production, like in studio interviews where he's saying, "Oh man, Keon Coleman, I'm so proud of myself for that one." I'm paraphrasing. I'm summing up quite long comments he made on the subject. It's like gruesomely shameless, this guy, and Pegula blurting out like, yeah, this guy that we spent a second round pick on 2 years ago, who's still probably only 23, if that. I didn't look it up, but while he's on the roster saying like, this guy's a turd, like trade him at least first and then say the lie about how Brandon didn't want to draft him. Wait to tell your stupid lie, Terry, you friggin' chump. You'll fall for anything, Terry. I know you're listening.
Yeah, that was a heck of a presser on Wednesday out of Buffalo from Pegula, and Beane, I think I wouldn't say that he's been drafting overly well of late. I mean, like there's
a lot of those picks. John, sorry to interrupt, but part of I don't know if it's irony exactly, but part of the irony is a lot of Brandon Beane's so-called best picks clearly were resulting of the input of McDermott on the defensive side of the ball. These guys like Rousseau and Terrell Barnard, like these are McDermott picks, and Brandon Beane is taking credit for those, which he wouldn't have made without McDermott's input, and then he's blaming on McDermott and Brady the pick that he made of his own volition in Keon Coleman. Dirtbag. Brandon Beane is a dirtbag.
I love it. But yeah. I mean, the last few first round or first picks by the Bills, looking at Maxwell Hairston from this past year, Keon Coleman, of course, the lightning rod right now, Dalton Kincaid, Kaiir Elam, Greg Rousseau, obviously a pretty good one in his own right. But it hasn't been
McDermott,
See, and so I think you're making this point on Twitter. I forget where exactly, but there's so much of this defense that you could argue is just sort of it's been overperforming relative to the personnel that it has, or it's very, very fit to a certain scheme. And now the guy who knows how to operate that is no longer in the building. So like the defense, which already wasn't like perfect necessarily, but it was, sound in what its like ethos was. Now that's kind of out the door. And like you have a new defensive coordinator coming in, whoever that may be, that's going to have to kind of sift through and see, what they can get out of it. And, they're going to have to draft on the defensive side of the ball.
How is Brian Dable done with his recent defensive coordinators? Like he just got in a feud with Wink Martindale, which would have been an example of a good enough defensive coordinator probably. And they had to like blow up the team because they couldn't get along. So good luck, Brandon. I'm sure you got a good plan for this.
Oh boy. So I don't know. I feel like as long as the Bills have Josh Allen, they'll be fine. And
Josh Allen will be fine for fantasy. Yeah, that's not. Yeah. Like I said, the Brian Dable, if he is hired by the Bills, it's basically on as previously planned for the Bills' offense. But the defense is going to regress substantially.
Yeah, I mean they're comfortable getting in shootouts, but that's not like a great way to like guarantee yourself success come the postseason. And I think at this point that's kind of what the Bills want more than anything, is winning in January and maybe even February. Moving on over the Ravens, they are really dragging this thing out. They still haven't made their coaching hire, but it seems like based on the tea leaves that there's a couple kind of leaders in the clubhouse, and both defensive guys, Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver, who was a Raven during his playing days. Your thoughts on this Ravens coaching search right now, and do you think that those, if you were running the show in Baltimore, that those would be two of the guys that you kind of landed on?
I don't know nearly as much about Weaver as I do Minter, and that's not to, I don't say that as in Weaver can't be the right answer here. I just think Jesse Minter is clearly the better of these two coaches when it comes to the X's and O's and the theory of the game and the game planning. And all of that matters to some extent, but it's not absolutely everything, because what we don't know yet is how well Jesse Minter can sort of run a group of players, like a whole team, I should say. there would be new responsibilities for Jesse Minter that don't pertain specifically to the areas that he's otherwise demonstrated such rare strength. Minter could be every bit as good of a defensive coordinator as he looks and still not a great head coach, especially if he's lacking something about the leadership qualities or attention to preparation, detail, practice details, cultural elements, whatever. And by all accounts, Anthony Weaver grades very well on some of those latter points, the culture aspect. For instance, the Miami players, and I assume pretty much every group of players that Anthony Weaver has coached, they all go to bat for him. Like they all say like, this guy's great, we love him. That too does not mean everything. Some players, coaches were not very good. Some coaches who are loved by their players are not good enough to win. And I don't know as much about Weaver from the scheming standpoint because he doesn't have the record that Minter does of on his own running a defense and making the defense just totally monstrous, especially in the way that the Chargers overachieved.
Sure.
Like that defense had no business being as good as it was, and Minter is the reason why that difference occurred. So Weaver, I'm not assuming is on that level with the X's and O's, but there's different kinds of head coaches who can prove successful in the NFL, to the extent of winning a Super Bowl. And maybe Sirianni is not a good model to follow, but you can see and if you watch Hard Knocks with the Eagles, the Sirianni stuff, you can see, in my opinion, why that guy is a successful head coach. It's not something you can tell from watching on TV where he just kind of seems like a crazy person who's just hollering about whatever. And you're like, well, he's a special teams coordinator. What does he even know? I don't know really either, but when you watch Hard Knocks, you can see why it's a well-run team that he has. And not to compare Weaver to Sirianni, I just mean to say, obviously the X's and O's are not everything. And maybe the case for Weaver is that he's more like a, culture builder, CEO type, as opposed to someone who is in the lab all day like Minter.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, which fits the Ravens' needs a little bit more. Their defense was abysmal most of these last 2 years, especially this year, so that they got some personnel stuff to fix in addition to getting this hire right. But it's obviously a very high pressure hire for both Baltimore and for Buffalo, as they're both kind of in their Super Bowl windows, but primes don't last forever. So
John, sorry, is Joe Brady not still a consideration for the Ravens, or has that been?
I think he did hire he did interview, but yeah. I would imagine that he's the Ravens have like further down the road with those other guys. But if Brady did well in the interview, I'm sure that he would. I
do like Brady still too. I think whoever gets him is lucky, probably.
Okay, I don't know. I was sort of bagging on Joe Brady this year just because it seemed like so much of watching Buffalo was just like, all right, Josh, just go do something. But
he built the ground game, before Brady tweaked the Brian Dable version of the offense. They were trying to do that Devin Singletary nonsense, so it's like Brady cut down the turnovers for Josh Allen. People don't see that, but if you look before Joe Brady, Josh Allen turned the ball over a lot, and then he stopped turning the ball over last year, basically because the Bills started running so much more and so much better. And so, but yeah, I think Brady, he's kind of like the next Sean Payton kind of thing, in my opinion, where he rose too fast, struck down like Icarus, came back up. Maybe it's not quite yet, but I think eventually he'll be running a team and probably pretty well.
Yeah, I'm optimistic on him. It was just like it was a little bit hasty coming off of the 2019 LSU to immediately go run an NFL offense
or whatever.
Yeah, that was meteoric. And then obviously we've seen in the last couple of years that probably had a lot to do with having Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and so on, Derek Stingley. All right, let's move on over to the games. Let's talk about them. Let's lead things off here. We got the Patriots and the Broncos in the AFC Championship game, just as we all expected. 3 o'clock Eastern on Sunday. Hopefully I'll be able to watch it. I don't know. We're getting some sort of crazy ice storm here in the South. Hoping that that ends up being all right. But regardless, we have the Patriots favored by what looks like 4.5 points right now. So I think that's one of the biggest road favorites we've seen ever in a conference championship game. It was actually come down. I think it was 5.5 when I looked.
Oh, wow.
I think it started at 5.5.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me because on the one hand, I think Jarrett Stidham's pretty awful. It's not that I'm at all unclear on him, but I also don't know if Bo Nix is very good. So if we're trying to anticipate the relative difference, it might not be that much. Not to unduly slander Bo Nix either. I think they're both pretty bad though, and if it turns out that Jarrett Stidham can kind of do a decent Bo Nix impression, box score wise, that would not shock me at all because Bo Nix's numbers are crap. They're talking low 60s completion percentage, sub 7 yards per attempt. Those are easy bars to clear, even for most backup quarterbacks. So Jarrett Stidham might not be. Sorry, if that line, the 5.5, especially if that's sort of reasoning like, well, at least 3 points difference for Nix, then I don't agree with that kind of specific reasoning. But I do like the Patriots' chances of getting the cover just because, again, the quarterback position is bad, even when it's Nix, and Stidham is worse. So even if the relative difference isn't a lot, it's some difference. And I think the Patriots have a really solid, a really like durable, coherent approach to the game this year. Something that both Vrabel and McDaniels deserve credit for, where they sort of looked at their roster, they figured out the way that roster should win games, and they don't lose sight of it. Like you can't trick the Patriots into losing their identity as a team. Like they know they have a very lucid understanding of what makes them go, and they set up those parts of their roster to contribute and affect games. And so be it Drake May carrying the burden, standing tall, running, whatever, making big plays, or playing a game in a shell where they lean heavily on the two running backs, Henderson and Stevenson, playing a patient game of attrition. Either of those approaches, I think, are plausible ways for the Patriots to get leverage over the Broncos in this game. But of course, the one constant with the Broncos that you can't negotiate at all is the defense will be terrifying. And the Patriots pass blocking is not good. Drake May has had a great season, but he's done so while dealing with more pressure than people probably noticed. So that might have something to do with
6 fumbles in the playoffs so far for
wow, that's
May.
crazy. So that offensive line still is not good. It's at best rebuilding. They have 2 rookies on the left side who will definitely be better in a year or two than they are right now. And that's, I think, why the Patriots didn't open up the passing. That end, I guess, they don't have like a true alpha receiver or whatever, but the Patriots didn't open up their passing game very much this year. Most of the winning they've done, it's been with, high 20s, low 30s pass attempts. And with the pass blocking issues they have, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess I see it a little bit outside of maybe like taking a play action shot deep to whatever, Kyle Williams or something. If they get to the line and they see that the Broncos are pressing too much with just a single high safety or something, maybe the Patriots go deep shot for that play there. But what I don't see is the Patriots trying to dink and dunk their way in the passing game down the field. I think it's more they'll try to tenderize that Denver pass rush, let it wear itself out a little bit in the ground game, and just, by logging a couple drives, wear them out so you can run on Denver, and then you open up the passing game. Because if Drake May with a 2nd and 6 or a 2nd and 5 and a defense that's having to rotate in its backup defensive linemen because they're starting to get a little tired, that's when I want to open up that passing game. And at that point, I think Drake May can hold serve even against the truly vicious corner rotation that the Broncos have. I mean, you saw Jaquan McMillan. He's a slot guy, I guess, but you would call him probably the second best corner they have, even though, in my opinion, Riley Moss probably gets criticized too much. So I think all 3 of those guys are just point blank or as a group, they are point blank too tough to throw on while your quarterback is under pressure. You have to remove the pressure somehow.
Yeah, and it's going to be tricky because I mean, I think that the Patriots have not been able to play a particularly clean offensive game in either of these first
They
two
have to be
playoff
patient.
games.
They can't expect easy points. They have to play patient and not, get too aggressive before they have an actual reason to be aggressive.
And this is not overly tangible or whatever, but I'm sure that like it's pretty well known in the Broncos locker room. Like the defense is going to have to kind of give them a shot to win this game. So expect a really good game from that Denver defense. And on the Broncos side, it is, I think, worth noting that the offensive line that they have versus what the Patriots have gotten to go against in the first two rounds is totally different. Someone was making this point on Twitter that if you look at just some of the offensive line metrics out there, where the unit ranks or the pass block, run block, win rates go, like the Chargers and the Texans were both bottom of the league, pretty much trading off being 32nd ranked in those type of metrics, whereas the Broncos far better. So the way that I feel like New England's front seven has been feasting in the early rounds here, it won't be quite as easy for them. But again, you do have probably a little bit more of a predictable and run heavy offense that Denver's going to be putting out there as far as its game plan goes. So for the Patriots, kind of knowing that and knowing that if they can just get Denver to a third and long and just survive the first two downs every time, like you can get yourself in a pretty good position there, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the Denver offensive line is good at pass blocking. I personally think it's pretty bad at run blocking, and I think ideological indifference or hostility to the run game nowadays is what leads PFF specifically to call that offensive line one of the best. I think it's one of the best pass blockers. I think they specifically trade off their ability to run block, and they can't drive at the point of attack much at all. They're like a zone blocking personnel group, not really a power personnel group, or at least they're not good at power personnel. But the key for me either way is that I don't think that the Patriots need to have a dominant defensive game, or more specifically, if the Patriots defense did look at all against the Broncos like it did the last 2 weeks, then the Broncos would just have no shot at all. So
Right.
given that I think the Broncos do have a shot, I more so see it as this is a Patriots defense that had certain limitations that we knew all along, and specifically it's the edge rushing. Like if Clavon Chason is one of your starting offensive linebackers, you can't rush off the edge. You can't do it. I know he's technically okay this year, but you're not
Sure.
threatening the edge. Whatever you get off the edge, it's like it's slipped past the offense. You're not dictating anything. So if Harold Landry is the guy who needs to spearhead your pass rush is probably average at best, because in my opinion, Landry's more like an ideal strong side guy, the kind of guy who helps defend against the run, gives you double-digit sacks, sure. But if you need Harold Landry to be the reason that the quarterback is getting rid of the ball, I think the quarterback might have enough time usually. So Barmore, and also a lot of the strength with the Patriots defense is specifically in the defensive tackles. So, not
Right.
the edge rush, the interior rush. And Barmore, Milton Williams, Tonga, forgot to check if he's healthy. Those three, I think, are going to hold strong against the Denver offensive line, especially I think Barmore could kind of throttle. I don't know if he's going to get shots at the center and the left guard. Miners is pretty stout, I guess, but I think
Yes.
Barmore could throw somebody around on the interior there, swallow up flatten a Jaleel McLaughlin type on a play.
Yeah. So if Denver can't really run and it becomes on Stidham, yeah, I think that's going to be tough.
I do expect that.
Yeah. So, but even though I'm not a big Bo Nix guy, either, I do think that
it comes down to
putting
Mims, John. Because Sutton's going to get Christian Gonzalez, and that's just a no-go.
That's a bad matchup for him in particular, too.
Marvin Mims is their second best receiver, but Sean Payton hates him more than anybody on earth, so it's a conundrum for the Broncos.
So I think you've talked me into the Patriots here. It looks like 75% of the bets placed at DraftKings are on the Patriots to cover that 4.5 point spread. It's a little bit more of a coin flip as far as the total is concerned, though, at 42.5.
Yeah, like I said, I'm worried about the pass rush of the Broncos getting to Drake May. And if, as much as I'm assuming that McDaniels will have a smart game plan, that him and Vrabel will come up with a smart, patient game plan, if they do get greedy and if they try to make Drake May throw passes against a Denver pass rush that will swallow up the left side of that and the right side too. It's not that the right side's that great or anything. It's just the left side of the Patriots offensive line is definitely vulnerable. The way that you as the Patriots give this game to the Broncos is by putting Drake May in a position to incur sacks and give turnovers to the Broncos. If you don't give the Broncos the chance to create those conditions, I don't know what the Broncos can really do realistically.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. So I'm siding with New England here. It's unfortunate, obviously, what happened to Bo Nix late in the games to end his season. Kind of puts a dour note on the Broncos. What has been an awesome year for them. So yeah, I just think the Patriots' path back to glory has been paved in gold, basically, to this point, playing three very flawed teams to make it to Super Bowl Sunday. That's my expectation here. Before we get on over to our next game, the NFC Championship game, we do have a message from our friends over at Dabble. Dabble isn't just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lovers. Dabble lets you win big. You can win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble is easy. New users get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link in the episode description below to download Dabble now. Also, like to make a note, if you're joining us on the live stream and you haven't already subscribed to RotoWire, give us a shot. Get 15% off any subscription using the code YouTube15. Just go to rotowire.com. Use that code YouTube15. We also got a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. And we're on to the NFC Championship game. We got the Rams and the Seahawks. The Seahawks, 2.5-point favorites at home. The over-under sitting at 47. I believe these teams split in the regular season. Obviously, that game in Seattle was a memorable one on that Thursday nighter. Crazy comeback from Seattle to get that one done. But now we're seeing the Seahawks check in as 2.5-point favorites over the Rams. The Seahawks had a very kind of easy go of things on Saturday night, whereas the Rams had to fight tooth and nail in the bitter cold in Chicago to get it done over the Bears to punch their ticket to this game.
Right. So in the history of, three-time opponents in a single season, there are a variety of ways that has gone. You have the team that sweeps in the regular season, losing in the playoffs sometimes. Sometimes it's more contended, each of the three contests. I think it's more the second thing this time. It's like these teams, as much as anything can happen, as much as the Rams or the Seahawks could sort of peel off, these big surprises or show a distinguishing feature between the two that didn't appear in the regular season, and then throttle them in the third case despite close contests in the first two. That seems unlikely to me. I think it's going to be more of the same, very bitterly fought, stingy kind of yardage between these two teams, because the Seahawks defense, in my opinion, it's not one of the best defenses of recent years or anything, but it's one of the best this season. You could argue it's the best non-Denver, non-Houston kind of defense. And with that, there's a lot of currency, especially in the playoffs, especially if you can run the ball in the playoffs, which I think the Seahawks have reason to believe they can generally. The Rams' run defense kind of banks on its ability to deter you by bluffing, by splitting gaps with run blitzes a couple times early in a game so that you get hit with a 2nd and 12 or whatever, and then they're banking on their offense's ability to get ahead before you're back on the field, at which point Sean McVay would be reasonable to assume, oh, this opposing team, they're just going to abandon the run now. They're just, because that's the league we're in. The kind of people who abandon the run when they're down 3-0 run pretty much every team. So what the Rams do is they bluff a run defense early in a game, and then they bank on the opponent's decision. They bank on the opponent abandoning that run threat of their own volition, which the Rams want them to do, and then the fact that the Rams had built a fake run defense in the first place doesn't matter because we're going to the phase of the game where they're actually built to defend, which is against the pass. They're built to blitz, cause disruption, and they're doing a money ball thing in the secondary too. Don't get me wrong; it's not as if the Rams have good corner personnel; they don't, but they do a money ball like a lot of teams. It's the same way the Chargers did with Minter this year. They do a money ball thing in the secondary where they're just using zone coverages and like man match hybrid zone coverages so that the corners don't have to actually cover receivers. They just cover areas. They just troll certain spots on the field that they think the other team is going to throw to a lot. And it usually works as long as they don't have to endure the ongoing run threat. If you stick to running the ball on the Rams, and if you part of this too is you have to keep the game script one where you can afford to run the ball. But as long as you're not down, 14-0 or 14-3 or something, and you keep running the ball against the Rams, their personnel will fall apart against the run. They can only split gaps. They can't hold gaps. They can't hold two gaps, especially. So you can run on them even if they try to swarm you early. And the Seahawks in their position, they have no choice but to stick to the run. It's almost like it's not possible to bait them into the script that the Rams need because Clint Kubiak will stick with the run, both because it's his inclination and because he knows it's like, we have to run the ball. We can't just have Sam Darnold throw it 40 times. What are we trying to do? Give them 5 turnovers? We're not going to do that. So the Rams have a lot of pressure, in my opinion, falling on their offense because their defense needs the offense to play well to be in the script where the defense's money ball scheme is at all viable. And if Matt Stafford's struggling to throw on the Seahawks defense, by the way, their secondary, those 3 corners it's not a Legion of Boom level extent, but it's still intimidating. You got
sure.
Reek Woolen and Nick Emenwari are the probably 2 most athletic defensive backs in the entire NFL, and they're huge. And you see like those huge guys, and they're the smallest guys on the defense, and the front 7 is fast too. It's a lot, and I don't know if the Rams are going to be able to run on them. So it all falls on Stafford, in my opinion. Definitely Nakua, you give the benefit of the doubt, but is Devontae Adams going to be able to get cracks on Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen enough to kind of make up the difference? I don't know. The Rams, if they can't get that level of production from Stafford, would probably need Darnold to just start giving the ball away despite Kubiak's deliberate attempts to hide him from those situations. So I'm picking the Seahawks, just not to say the Rams can't win. It's just I feel like the path is narrower for them because it all falls on Stafford. And Stafford it very well might answer that call. But if he doesn't, Rams are just toast. They just have nothing. They can't win with as little quarterback production as the Seahawks can.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's a really good way to distill it down. Whereas, the Seahawks can win in a variety of ways, and including one in which Sam Darnold isn't exactly lighting it up. Whereas, if Stafford's not having himself a ball game, it's going to be pretty tough for the Rams to get it done here. Now, let's go back to the Seahawks and their run game, because obviously they incurred a big injury this past weekend with Zach Charbonnet going out. But I do feel like because they split the work so much this year between Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, that I feel like Walker, and he's the guy that was obviously a workhorse during his time in college, different ball game, of course, now, but I feel like at this stage, he's fresh enough to be able to take on, kind of whatever workload is needed of him.
Yeah, as much as George Holani or whoever's the running back 3, as much as they, I'm sure, can contribute in certain ways, given the stakes of the moment, I would sooner imagine this is a 20-plus carry game for Walker than one where Walker gets to 15 carries and Holani getting a Charbonnet workload. I don't think Holani's getting a Charbonnet workload. I think Holani might get upwards of 8 to 10 carries. But if so, it would have to require. Oh, sorry, not Holani. My bad. Who's even healthy on this team now? Oh my God. Sorry. Is
yeah, they just opened up his window, and
Oh, okay.
They opened his window. I'm not totally sure. I mean, but by
I
that,
don't know who's on their practice squad, but I'm assuming in any case,
they got
if the
Kenny
second
Mack
running back in,
still.
they got who?
Kenny McIntosh,
Oh, Kenny McIntosh. Oh, I thought
but
he was hurt too.
he's not available.
Okay, so yeah, I
But
don't know
Yeah,
who's on
he
their
is
practice
hurt,
squad, but
so
in
it's
any
going to be
case, that
Helani.
running back 2 will not get a Charbonnet workload unless it's a blowout, basically, or at least if the second half arrives and the Rams are down 13 points, then the running back 2, be it Helani or somebody else, might start to get looks that resemble the role that Charbonnet had before the injury. But yeah, given the stakes of the situation, I think Walker will get both his customary usage and the Charbonnet usage until or unless the Seahawks get at least a, I don't know, 6-7 point lead.
And then kind of zooming out, I think it's been rather assumed by people that Walker would not be returning to Seattle after his contract runs out this year. But with the Charbonnet injury, how does that kind of alter Seattle's offseason plans in your mind?
A lot of even the most prized running backs in a given free agent cycle nowadays will sign for 1 or 2 year deals. I kind of at this point assume the Seahawks, given that the Seahawks are probably assuming Charbonnet isn't back any earlier than the latest you're allowed to keep a player on the IR, PUP, or whatever. I assume they will try to pay Walker something like either like a 1 year $15 million or a 2 year $20 million kind of thing, something like that. The people who had speculated on Walker in Dynasty because of his chance to hit free agency don't need to view the Charbonnet injury as a bad thing if Walker re-signs, because in my opinion, Charbonnet is not playing much next year. And so it's not quite the long term. It's not the long term in the clear kind of thing as if Walker were to go to another team where he would be used as a workhorse. But I still think even if the Seahawks try to get a round 4 running back or some kind of noted backup behind Walker going into this year, I don't think that player will get nearly as much usage as Charbonnet did the past couple of years, because Charbonnet is a quite good running back. It's not easy to find players like him.
No, it's not. So I feel like it would make sense for both sides if Walker is back in Seattle, that at least next season with Charbonnet, of course, suffering that injury late in this year. So probably looking at like an October return, best case scenario, and probably maybe even a little bit later on than that. But all right, so we've covered both of these games. Why don't we give couple quick final predictions on the scores, and we'll get out of here. So your expectation for Patriots Broncos is
24-17 Patriots.
All right. I will go similarly low scoring. That would put us to the under. I'm going to go Patriots 20, Broncos 10. Yeah, I'm worried about that Broncos offense here. Rams Seahawks, what do you got?
I'll say Seahawks 21, Rams 15, or some stupid 2-point conversion type of situation. I don't
know. Give me the Seahawks 31, Rams 28. I think this one's going to be crazy.
Nice. That'd be more entertaining. Let's hope for your version.
Yeah, we're rooting for that. We're rooting for something crazy because, I feel like not a tough watch necessarily for Patriots Broncos, but certainly I think there's a lot more watchability upside in the NFC championship game. So we got a little Patriots Seahawks redux from about 10 years ago, I think would be, or 11 years ago, would be our Super Bowl matchup. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, big thanks to our friends over at Dabble and over at Blue Wire. Again, if you haven't checked out and subscribed to RotoWire just yet, get 15% off any subscription when you use the code YouTube15. Fantasy basketball, fantasy hockey are cooking along right now. Super useful for that. We've got great tools just as good as we have for football. And then, of course, if you're a fantasy baseball player, we're already full speed ahead on our projections, rankings, all that good stuff. Content's coming out. So a lot to get to tide you over until next NFL season. Then, of course, we're going to keep things rocking all the way through the off season. So check us out. 15% off. Use that code YouTube15 for Mario Puig. I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.